From rock bottom to the bright lights, this is where redemption meets hustle. CEOs, entrepreneurs, creators, and comeback stories. This is real inspiration. Welcome to the GITT Up Podcast with your host, Adam Larkin. It's not just a show, it's a movement. Now let's get it.
Billy O'Brien didn't just find recovery, he built a movement around it. From his Louisville, Kentucky roots to leading statewide initiatives that are transforming the recovery landscape, Billy's story is one of grit, grace, and relentless advocacy. He's the Kentucky Program Director for Young People in Recovery, President for the Board for the Louisville Recovery Community Connection, and a man whose impact reaches far beyond titles. Billy's journey from a tennis player and a hardworking landscaper to one of the most influential recovery leaders in the region is proof that purpose can grow from any soil. Whether he's writing grants, traveling the country to advocate for change, or empowering the next generation of leaders, Billy reminds us that recovery isn't just possible, it's powerful. Billy, welcome to the GITT Up Podcast, brother.
Man, thanks for having me. Glad to make the drive from Louisville to here.
Absolutely. Hopefully it wasn't too bad with traffic today.
No, actually smooth drive for once. You know, all that construction going on. It's been rough on the travel lately.
Right. Well, let's get into it, man. So where are you originally from and where'd you grow up?
So I'm originally from Louisville, Kentucky. I was adopted there. You know, my parents got me. I was about a month old when they got me from the adoption agency, and you know, I've been in Louisville my whole life. Went to grade school, high school, college there. Just never left.
Nice. I always love going to Louisville, man. You know, like I said, it reminds me out here, it's probably one of the closer things to New York. You know, it's the city, everything's going on. People love the gear, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's
the restaurants.
Yeah, that's one of the beautiful things about Louisville is one, the food. Obviously, we got a lot of really great restaurants there. But two, it's a big city, but it doesn't necessarily feel like a big city. It doesn't. You know, for me, going to New York, I feel like I get lost, or Los Angeles. Right. I mean, those places are massive. You know, Louisville, you get a big city feel, but it's
not 9 million people condensed in it.
Right. Just under 1 million.
Yeah. So you were a tennis player in your younger years. How did that discipline and structure play into your early life?
Oh, man. Tennis, you know, for me, was my you know, my passion growing up. Really took to it my freshman year of high school, and you know, made something out of myself doing that. You know, when you're playing tennis, it's you against one other person. It's mano a mano, and
mano a mano, man.
Yeah, to me, it's the purest sport out there. You don't have any teammates to rely on. You know, it takes a lot of skill to do. I've always said it's an easy sport to learn, but it's a hard sport to be good at.
Right.
And so learning that discipline and, you know, having to have the mindset. So, you know, if you lose a point, you can't sit there and dwell on it because, you know, 5 seconds later, you got to go ahead and serve the ball and get ready for the next point.
Right.
If I'm sitting here thinking about, oh my God, I just hit that shot in the net. What was I doing? What went wrong? I'm not focused on the present.
Exactly.
You know, I'm not going to be able to you know, play that next point.
I loved playing tennis at a couple country clubs when I was a teenager, like 14 years old. But now, being old and arthritic, I actually just got my sister, when I went home to New York, I'm sure you saw, I got pretty good at pickleball really quickly.
Yeah.
And I just ordered I just got new pickleball rackets and balls and stuff. And ironically, they just put a court in London at the state park like few weeks ago, so I'm gonna start going hard with that.
Yeah, I haven't gotten into the pickleball thing yet. Tennis I haven't played in a while. Just where I live in Louisville, I'm about 40 minutes from, you know, where a lot of my friends are, where they play, and so it's hard for me to get out there as often as I like. And pickleball is just now starting to pick up in my part of town too. So someday I'll get out there and get. Everybody says I'll be pretty good at it since I got the tennis background.
Absolutely. So let's talk about the other side of that story. In your teenage years, what was it like when things started to get rough?
Well, for me, it wasn't I shouldn't say it wasn't my teenage years. It wasn't until college when things started to get rough for me. You know, second semester, freshman year, you know, a lot of peer pressure started to sit in. going to Bellarmine College. It's Bellarmine University now. They changed the name, but being on the tennis team there, and I didn't live in the dorms. Still living at home to help the family save a little bit of money, and I still had some friends in Louisville, and so I was just kind of doing my own thing. I didn't drink or party a whole lot when I was in college or in high school. I could probably count the number of times I drank alcohol on two hands, and really didn't do it when I got to college. But that peer pressure of the guys on the tennis team saying, "Hey, you coming out tonight?" No, I'm gonna go hang out with my friends. I haven't seen them all week. I've been in school and on the tennis team practicing and all that, and finally I just gave in and went out to a party one night and started hanging out with them, and as they say, the rest is history. I was off and running. I found an outlet for a void that I had in my life that I'd been constantly looking to fill. I wanted to be accepted. I wanted to be a part of something, and so by saying yes and giving in to them, I was now a part of something, and I was going out, having a good time, and doing everything.
Well, and it's really easily socially acceptable, and especially when you're in college, it's like everybody's getting lit. So it's, not even having that problem in your early teenage years, it's easy to start at that age and not even realize like this is going downhill fast or I have a problem because you're already 18 to 22.
Right. And I mean, most people I think know the narrative that it's almost like a rite of passage. You go to college, you drink, you party, you have a good time.
You load up, you party.
Get a little bit of education, and then, once you're done with your school, then it's on with your life.
Right.
For me, that's not exactly how it worked.
So what age were you when alcohol actually began to take control of your life? I know I'm sure it wasn't early college.
No. Well, I wouldn't have said that several years ago, but, looking back, I can say probably it did. I really started drinking when I was, right around 19 years old. And, once I started partaking in the parties and the drinking and all that, my grades started to slip. I think I had a 3.5 grade point average in high school, B and A student. But in college, I started failing some classes, not going to class. And at a small school like Bellarmine, when you've got 15 people in the classroom, your professors know if you're not there.
Right.
They got strict attendance rules and all that. But I was the president of the Student Activities Council, and I was the captain of the tennis team, and I lost all that because of my grades. And eventually I ended up leaving Bellarmine because of it. And I guess that, for the longest time, I didn't think anything of it because right after I left Bellarmine, my parents got me in to see a psychologist, and I, tried to figure out what was going on, and I got diagnosed with ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder.
Right.
And so there was my problem. It wasn't the alcohol.
Nah, I got ADHD, man.
Yeah.
What do you want from me?
Yeah. And so, I was lucky that, because I didn't finish school, but I was lucky that I had a skill. And I fell right into it, and that was becoming a tennis pro. So, once I got done with school, with Bellarmine, I tried U of L for a semester, but I was having some bad side effects with some of the medication they put me on for the ADHD, having real bad tremors, and was, embarrassed to be in public because they could start at any time, just sitting there shaking, and
right.
I can't control it. And so, I didn't finish the semester at U of L, but I ended up teaching tennis. And, I did that for the better part of a decade. And it went really well. I was making some good money and making a lot more money doing that, working at country clubs and tennis clubs than a lot of my friends were in their first jobs out of college. And, again, looking back, I can see that, over time that the drinking really started to affect, my career as a tennis pro. We're supposed to be there for a lesson at 9 a.m. and you're walking in there at 5 till. it's not a problem. Or you're
Right.
having to cancel lessons on a Saturday morning because you're out too late on a Friday. And, it wasn't, a regular occurrence for me to do those things, but, they add up over time. Your employers, start to take notice of when you're there, when you're late, the professionalism that goes into it. And so, that was really my life for, the next 10 years teaching tennis and then beyond.
So what do you think the turning point was that made you realize that you actually needed help?
I was tired.
I get that. I'm sick and tired, man.
Yeah. I was worn out. My drinking pretty much went from, 18, 19 years old to 38. So 20 years.
Right.
Of drinking and switching jobs constantly because I knew that the reality of me getting fired was right around the corner because of my performance, or they knew, my employers knew, even though I want to say that they didn't know.
Right. We think they don't, but everybody else knows.
Right.
Yeah.
And that there was a big gap in there between me teaching tennis and then me getting into landscaping. I got I was fortunate that my cousin worked in landscaping and got me a job at a company, and I was doing really well there. And for the next few years, doing the landscaping, I would say next 3 or 4 years, everything was okay. I was showing up on time. I was doing good. I was, making an impact in the company and in a position to be promoted and move up and all that stuff. And then, of course, the drinking got in the way again. When you got to be there at 7 a.m. to get your day started, and you're out at the bar till 4 a.m.
Right.
That's what time the bar closed in Louisville.
Right.
4 a.m.
Same in New York.
Yeah. By the time you get home, you're lucky if you get an hour of sleep.
Yeah.
And so it started to catch up with me, and I was still a part-time bartender at a local hole in the wall that I went to for 15 years or so. And I never really, it took me a long time to really realize that I had a drinking problem, that I might be an alcoholic, that I was comparing myself to my friends. I was like, I don't drink any more than these guys sitting next to me. But who was I sitting? Where was I sitting?
Right.
I was sitting in a bar.
Right.
I
don't drink any more than all the other alcoholics.
Yeah, and I didn't.
Right.
The difference was, for me, was that once I had that first drink, I wasn't going to stop. I could start at 8 a.m. to tailgate for a noon Louisville football game, but I wasn't stopping until 4 a.m. the next day.
Right.
My friends that I'd started tailgating with, they would go home after the game. They're home at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Well, I'm out another 12 hours drinking and partying. And that was what was, becoming the problem. But that's what I couldn't see. And then, we talk about labels so much in recovery. My idea of what an alcoholic was somebody that couldn't stop drinking, that they had to drink all the time. They had the shakes and all that. My story is a little different. I didn't drink all the time. I'd have periods of sobriety, or I guess I really can't call it sobriety. I just didn't have the urge to drink. And, I'd go 2-3 days, couple weeks, went 3 months at one point, didn't even want to drink, didn't drink. So therefore, how can I be an alcoholic? That's not what an alcoholic is. That's not what my vision, that's not what society told me an alcoholic was.
Right.
So I think I was blinded for a long time.
I think it's like a hobo walking around with a paper bag and a bottle.
Yeah.
It's like a stereotype.
Yeah. And I know different now.
Right.
We both know different now.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not what it really is, but that's what we were taught.
Exactly.
That's what we saw. That's what we see in TV shows, movies, so why wouldn't that be my vision of what an alcoholic was?
Right. Yeah. I mean, we had no clue, especially, we know what other people tell us until we're actually in it ourselves. How are we going to know,
Yeah. Yeah.
And not let alone be able to come out the other side of that and have empathy.
Right.
Like, how can you put yourself in somebody else's shoes,
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And, it didn't matter that I couldn't see. You say you can't see the trees through the forest, right? It didn't matter that I was stealing money from my employers, that I was taking money out of my great aunt's purse or my mom's purse. I was constantly lying. There wasn't a true thing come out of my mouth. But I didn't have a problem because I wasn't a stereotypical alcoholic.
Right.
And so I could always beat it. I could put it down whenever I wanted to. Hey, I just had 3 months where I didn't drink. I can do this whenever I want. But those days got fewer and fewer. And, eventually got to the point where I got caught enough times. And, a lot of times it wasn't that, I was stealing money or doing whatever I was doing to try to get a drink. Sometimes I needed gas money.
Right, exactly.
I needed to get a meal.
Yeah.
I was fortunate that I wasn't, homeless or on the streets yet.
Right.
But those. Trying to just make those ends meet, because I would get paid on a Friday, and I would go to the little bar, and all that money would be gone by Sunday evening.
Right. If you're lucky.
Yeah. If I'm lucky.
Yeah.
I'm sure there were plenty of times where it was Saturday afternoon and I've blown all my money, whether it's, not just on me, but, when I get drinking, I get a little loose with the
everybody
wallet.
else some drinks.
And, misery needs company, right?
Yeah.
Anybody will talk to me if I buy them a drink.
Exactly.
And so, it was just I think I was blinded for a long time. And it just took enough opportunities for me to finally realize that something finally had to change. One DUI didn't do it. I didn't get many consequences from that. My parents helped with the lawyer bills. Didn't lose my job with my employer. I got a basic slap on the wrist. I had to pay a fine, go to some classes. I got a public intoxication. They wanted to get me with another DUI, but they couldn't because I blew under.
Right.
And when the state trooper pulled me over, he said, "You've been drinking?" I said, "No." He said, "Well, I can smell it on you." I go, "Well, I haven't been drinking today." This was like 11 o'clock in the morning. He goes, "When'd you have your last drink?" "Probably about 3 o'clock in the morning." He goes, "Well, man, you sure had a good night, didn't you?" I was like, "Okay." And then, I got a second DUI, and they tried to charge me with my second DUI, but they couldn't do it because the statute of limitations ran out. So I got DUI 1 penalties. And so another slap on the wrist. So it wasn't, the consequences just weren't there for me, or at least not there yet. And,
right.
But, when I finally lost my job with, I was definitely in danger of losing my job with the lawn care company. I stopped showing up to work, and I was starting to get scared. And so I was kind of starting to hide in the house, and my parents were away on their 3-month vacation to Florida every winter, and it was March 29th of 2016, and I woke up that morning after my last run at it, and I was like, I bet they come home early. And about 6 hours later, they walked through the door, and they sat me down and said, "Look, we've got we can't do this anymore." I said, "We've got a place that we'll send you to get you some help." And
this was after them being on a 3-month hiatus.
Yeah.
So they'd obviously been thinking about it while they were gone.
Oh, yeah, yeah. They had encouraged me before to get treatment. And, I went to an IOP, but, it was every other day. And so I knew, and I didn't want to stop. I was just doing it to please them, right, and everybody else. And so I would go to the IOP, and, I would go to the IOP that night, and then I'd go out to the bar afterwards because I didn't have to, go to the IOP on Tuesday.
Right.
So I'd go out and drink that night and party and do whatever I wanted to do because they weren't going to test me until I went back Wednesday if they were going to test me at all. And so I really didn't want to do it. And then insurance came back and said, "Well, we're not paying for any more." And so I was like, "Okay, well, I'm done."
Right.
So it was easy. But I really didn't want to stop then. But they offered me help, and they said, if you don't take us up on this, we're done. We don't know what's going to happen to you, but we can't live like this anymore. And I said, "I'm ready." And the next morning they dropped me off in 22nd and Chestnut in the middle of west end of Louisville and said, "See you in 30 days.
Nice. Well, that answered my next question about key moments or people that guided you into recovery.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
that was it. I mean, one of my best friends, Dave, he had talked to me. He talked to me before and said, "Hey, man, you might have a problem, and you probably should talk to somebody." And I was just like, "Oh, okay." And knowing that he was doing the same things that I was doing.
You got a problem, buddy.
Yeah. And so it didn't really hit home coming from him, but my parents had talked to him also, and I think he was the one that recommended the treatment facility that they sent me to, because it was a guy that he went to high school with that was running it. It was a new program that was run by the Men's Healing Place in Louisville, and so those people were influential, and then my cousin and the lawn care company were really for me doing it, and the I was also working at the liquor store for two of my best friends, and they told me I needed help. They didn't do much to in a way of showing me a direction or how to do it, but they were there, and they basically said, "Look, we gotta fire you. We can't have you here anymore." And so that was it for me as far as employment goes. So
you gotta go.
Yeah, gotta go.
So before working in recovery, you worked for the landscaping company. Mm-hmm. What did that experience teach you about like work ethic and responsibility? Because I know at this point you're not sober. You go to treatment, you get sober, and then you're working for the landscape company again before getting involved in YPR, right?
Yeah. So, this is where I really learned about what a true second chance is. While I was sitting in the treatment facility, my boss called me. Actually, I think he came down and talked to me in person down there, and said, "Look, man, I'm going to hold your job for you. A lot of people in this company don't want you to, but I see potential, and I want to give you a second chance." My dad was an alcoholic. I was like, "Oh, man. Wow." And he said, "You don't have to come back right away, but when you are ready,
there's a job for you.
There's a job for you."
Yeah.
Like, you're starting at the bottom, but there's a job for you. And I took him up on that. I thought maybe, hearing that, a lot of people probably didn't want me around, that maybe I'd look somewhere else. There's plenty of landscape companies, right? Nobody wants to do their own lawn care anymore or their landscaping. So I was like, I can find a job somewhere. But ultimately, I ended up going back there. And, I took him up on the offer to go back when I was ready. The counselors at the treatment facility said, if you don't have to go back to work right away, take some time and work on yourself. So I started going to support group meetings every day and, worked on myself for another 2 months after I got out of that treatment facility. So 90 days.
Right.
In some of these circles you hear 90 meetings in 90 days.
Right.
Well, I was able to do more than that because I didn't have a job. I didn't have this or that. I was doing some side work for some of my parents' friends to get a little income and
which is really even better at that point, because now you're hitting more meetings than is recommended, and you're spending more time on yourself, like getting yourself together, but you're also working, which is like the transition you want to see anyway. So that's like a win-win-win.
Yeah. And I really credit that full circle right there. My parents, the lawn care company, the treatment, the counselors, everybody making that suggestion to me and being by my side while I work through that decision. Because I think that, that 90 days really got me stable. It wasn't like I had to get out of treatment and go right back to work.
Right.
Where, 30 days after you put down the bottle, you're still probably not mentally stable, emotionally stable or anything like that. Then, one thing could set you off and send you right back out. And, so that 90 days really allowed me to work on myself and, develop new skills, new coping skills, new support group circles and all that. And then when I was ready, I called the lawn care company and I said, "Oh, by the way, I got a DUI. I'm not gonna be able to drive your trucks."
Nice.
But they're like, okay, well, we'll work with you. And so they did. And, they gave me every opportunity to succeed, and I didn't held the job for me. He ended up leaving, and I ended up taking his position. And even before that, the work that I'd done in the company, they made me safety director of the company. And so I was in charge of, putting together safety plans and making sure that all the trucks were safe and all the staff had their training and everything that goes into it. And it's a lot when you're talking about, a lawn care company, because we've got so many moving parts, chainsaws, mowers,
Right.
sprayers. I mean, just everything. And so you had to know every little detail. And so they put that responsibility in my lap. And then when my boss left, they gave me his position, so I was running both. I was the department manager, and I got to oversee 600 properties that we sprayed their lawns and took care of them, and staff of 2 or 3 people underneath me, and we were turning those properties over every 2 months, so every 60 days.
Just starting to get entrepreneurial in the landscaping deal, taking on tons of different jobs.
Yeah, and the owner of the company saw the potential in me now too, and so he sent me up here to UK. They used to have a program where you'd get in a week's time, you would get a semester of classes in at the agricultural department, and it was turf maintenance. So I got turf maintenance 1 and 2. So I got certifications, and I've got those the rest of my life that says I know what I'm doing. And so they invested in me. They gave me, that education that I was lacking. I didn't get the college degree, but guess what? I'm an expert in turf.
Right.
I know grass.
Exactly.
I know what weeds in your yard.
And we're not talking about the other grass.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Today we know the right grass.
Correct.
Nice.
So they really invested a lot in me and really showed me the meaning of what a true second chance is. And as a result of that, they started becoming a second chance employer.
Nice.
So I was really the first test subject,
right,
for lack of a better term. And then, if they needed to fill a spot, hey, Billy, we got this guy. What do you think about his background? Do we give him a second chance?
Right.
Sure. And, as long as they didn't have any violent felonies or anything like that, we'd hire them and give them a chance.
So what was the transition like? Like once you actually found recovery, how'd you get involved with young people in recovery, YPR?
So I actually found them before I started working for them. We, for me, my alcoholism was very social. I didn't like to drink alone. I didn't like to be in my basement with the window shut all day long. I wanted to be out. I wanted to be part of something. I wanted to be with the in crowd. And so my biggest fear when I decided to get sober was going to be loneliness. Like, what are you going to do? What's the first thing that they ask you when you sit down at a restaurant? When you and I go to have those, romantic dinners that my wife talks about, what's the first thing they ask you?
What do you want to drink?
Yeah. And it's not, do you want Coke?
Right.
Or water or
it's usually
tea?
Check out the happy hour margaritas. Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you function in society like that? How do you go to a baseball game and have a hot dog without a beer? How do you tailgate at a football game without drinking? I mean, a wedding. What do you do when the bride and groom get married? You toast them with champagne. Yeah. So, I mean, it's all around us. So, my thought was like, well, what am I going to do? And so, I found YPR, went to a bonfire, and, it was some people that I met from some of the AA groups that I was a part of, and we just said, well, let's go out and have a good time. There's only so much you get out of just sitting around a room and in a meeting and then fellowshipping for 10, 15 minutes after the meeting. I needed more than that.
Right.
And so we said, so a group of us said, we'll go to this bonfire, and we went there, and that's how I met them. There was a bonfire. They did a meeting, support group meeting during, when it got dark enough and the fire really got going, and they had volleyball and cornhole, and they had live music, and it was like, oh wow, this can be fun.
Yeah.
And then, slowly we started getting groups together and going to football games and baseball games, and then more YPR stuff. We started doing some some hiking with them. They did a once a month group hike, and so we got out into nature, did a little mindfulness, got some exercise.
Nice.
As you and I both are all about promoting a healthy lifestyle, and that was great. And then doing glow in the dark ultimate frisbee in a park in Louisville.
Doing a bunch of cool stuff that we did when we were lit sober.
Yeah.
So it's like things that are fun for anybody, but learning how to do them, not let alone sober, but also like finding ways to get the same dopamine and serotonin activated that we used to use with drugs and alcohol.
Yeah, and that goes back to what my sponsor told me early on in recovery. I was maybe 9 months in, and he said, "Man, you've been to enough meetings. What do you do? What do you do for fun? What do you do for yourself?" I go to meetings. I'm working on myself. I see people that goes, no. That's not what I'm talking about. I want you to find something that you used to enjoy doing before you ended up the way you are, and I want you to start doing it. And so I started going to Louisville Bats games, and then I started going to the movies, and then slowly, then I, those were all stuff, by myself. And then with YPR and the community that they helped build, I was able to start making some friendships, and now I had people to hang out with that were like-minded, doing the same stuff. I didn't rely on the alcohol or the drugs or whatever. That's one thing I look back on now, and I thought that I had really good friends back in the day, and when I got sober, I would try to meet up with them and go to lunch and hang out, and something, it was just so awkward.
Well, and you realize who your friends are. What I mean?
Yeah. I said, well, you know what? I'll make this easy since this is uncomfortable. Call me whenever you're ready, or if you want to hang out sometime. And in almost 10 years now, I can probably count on one hand the number of people that have called me or that I stay in contact with. So the only thing we had in common was the alcohol.
Right.
And so, finding YPR and doing these events really, really enhanced my recovery. It went from, okay, I'm making it through life. I've got a pretty good career going on with the landscape company and all this. And then I started, and then just to build those friendships and have, a life outside of just work and support group meetings. I was like, okay, this is it. Now I'm here.
So how did you get into, so you've grown 15 YPR chapters across Kentucky. Mm-hmm. What's been your approach to creating that kind of momentum? That's pretty impressive.
My predecessor, Tara Hyde, who hired me and gave me took a chance on me, and I guess she saw something in me too, and because I really wasn't sure about doing this job and taking over, because I was really happy with the landscape company. I was doing good. I was making a name for myself there. But sometimes we got to take a risk in life, and I was like, you know what, this, I thought that I might like to get into recovery at some point in my life, and do, whether it was counseling or treatment or whatever. And it's like, okay, well, we'll do this. And I thought that I would just be kind of making sure that some people around Kentucky were having a good time and going on hikes and doing some activities and holiday parties and that sort of stuff. And I didn't realize what it went into it. And on my first day, our executive director goes, hey, we got a partner that is trying to get some legislation passed, and we need somebody from Kentucky to talk to Senator Rand Paul. Billy, you're it.
Ready, go.
Yeah. I was like, hold on. It's like, this is my first day. She's like, you'll be okay. And so I was like, okay, this is really bigger than whatever I imagined. And so, I took what Tara built here. She started the first YPR chapter in Kentucky in 2014 in Louisville. And, she had a vision of wanting to get them funded and starting them in other parts of the state. And she was able to do that. And, when I got here, I think we had 10 chapters. And I, the first year I spent learning and kind of looking at the landscape and trying to see, what else was out there. And the couple things that we were missing was one was a travel budget.
Right.
And two was a marketing budget.
Those usually help.
Yeah. And so, we were expecting our chapters to go out and present in the community without, anything that really said YPR on it or being able to promote themselves. And
For all those you don't know, YPR is Young People in Recovery.
Yeah, Young People in Recovery. And so, we were operating around the state, and our local communities, the counties that we were in maybe know who we are, but the rest of the state really didn't. Right. And, we had an opportunity where we started streamlining all of our data, and I didn't necessarily need a program assistant anymore that was doing all the data for me. We streamlined that, and I can go to the computer right now and in 30 seconds have you all the data you ever wanted to know about YPR. Right. So I was like, okay, so we're spending $30,000+ a year on a position we don't need.
Exactly.
We can move that.
So you learned a lot entrepreneurial about budgets, about finance, about running a business, about how to actually keep something afloat. I mean, that's a lot to be on somebody's plate, being like, all right, I got this much money allocated to run this many chapters of a company. What happens when I don't get the same amount of funding, Right.
And that goes back to the landscape days where I was in charge of, okay, we've got this many properties. We need this much chemical. We need this much chemical here. We need this much fertilizer. We need this much grass seed. And this is the budget that I've got to work with.
Exactly.
And this is what we're able to charge people. And this is how, so, I learned a lot of that in the landscape. So I brought that over to YPR. And I was like, okay, so we can really make some noise here. And so, I got that budget. I got that change. And I got the travel budget. I got the marketing budget. And so I started getting, some swag for my chapters to give out when they go to events. If they're at a rally and they've got a table there and trying to give out information. Well, here's some trifolds. We never had trifolds. Well, good. Now we've got information to give to the public. We've got bracelets to hand out. People love to go to tables and just pick up pens and notepads and whatever they can get their hands on.
Everybody loves something.
Yeah, and so we started providing that for them. And then the big thing for me was the travel. I wanted to be able to show up to these events that my teams were putting on and show them support in person. It's real easy in today's world where I can sit behind a computer and do everything that I need to do. We got Zoom. We got Google Meets. I can meet with you once a month and we can talk about how your chapter is going. What do you need? I can get it for you. I can ship it to you, this and that. But I think my team really appreciated and really bought into what YPR really could be here in the state when I started showing up in person and supporting them.
Well, and the cool thing too is, so I've, met up with you in California, Atlanta, you've been in DC, all over the place. So it's like traveling the country and beyond. What have you learned from seeing how other states approach recovery?
Kentucky kicks ass.
So that's exactly what stands out about Kentucky's recovery community.
Yeah.
And I've noticed that too, man, like compared to the rest of the country, Kentucky's behind on a lot of stuff, but they're light years ahead on recovery.
Yeah.
I didn't get sober till I came to recovery, or till I came to Kentucky. I'll tell you that. I didn't even know about recovery.
Yeah. Kentucky was hit hard by opiates. The pharmaceutical companies didn't do us any favors back in the 90s and early 2000s, pumping all those drugs into Appalachia. And
Purdue.
Yep. Purdue.
That's how I got hit, man. 2001, Purdue Pharmaceuticals, OxyContin as non-addictive substances.
Yeah, non-addictive, right?
And they actually targeted, like you're saying, people in Appalachia, like coal miners, people in Kentucky.
Yeah, I just talked
Virginia.
to a guy in West Virginia last week, and he was talking about a community that got hit hard. And I said, well, that's what they did. They focused on the coal mining communities here in Kentucky, Ohio, West Virginia. That's why these were the hardest hit states. He goes, that's exactly what that town that I was talking about did. They all were coal mining town. I go, well, that's what they hit.
Right.
But because of that, Kentucky had an opportunity to put some resources together and put some stuff in place and really help people. And they did a good job. All of our state representatives, they went to bat for us. I think that the number is that Kentucky has more recovery beds per capita than any other state in the country. That says a lot.
Yeah.
As small of a state as we are compared to some of these other ones, we've got more recovery beds per person than these other states.
Right.
And we put together CORE, the
Kentucky Opioid Response Effort.
Right. We put that together to make sure that we were getting funding from the federal government and that those funds were going to organizations that were really doing the work and helping people. And, Kentucky's done amazing stuff. Now, does that mean that we're doing everything right? Probably not. one thing that keeps coming to my mind, especially lately, is like, for example, in Tennessee and a few states up north, and they've got places that they've got recovery high schools. Kentucky doesn't have those. I mean, how cool would that be if we had a safe place for kids to go?
Right. Kind of like a teenage community center deal.
Yeah. So there's other stuff to be learned from other states. A youth prevention program, better without it, that I think that the Kentucky Opioid Advisory Commission is using. They started their own youth prevention program. They got this from Florida, and it's interactive. It's social media. It's really hitting home with the kids and meeting them where they're at. And so we can learn something from that. So there are some stuff going on in other states, but I think a lot of states do look at Kentucky as a leader in a lot of recovery services.
Yeah, so the growth of community cleanups, statewide rallies under your leadership has been incredible. I've seen a lot of cool stuff going on. Mm-hmm. How did those start, and what impact have they had? So,
that's kind of growing the brand also. We've been doing community cleanups in Louisville for years, and what those consist of is a group of volunteers going out into high-risk areas in Louisville, homeless camps in particular, in those areas, and cleaning up used syringes.
Harm reduction.
Yeah, exactly, harm reduction. And, we're really interested in stopping the spread of disease. If we didn't have syringe exchanges, what would the HIV outbreak look like? What would the hepatitis outbreak look like? Services like that have really curbed that and really, got a hold on it so that we don't have those outbreaks. And so we want to make sure that we're cleaning up areas where there's, good amount of syringes. In a 3-block area in parts of Louisville, we can get upwards of 250 syringes.
Right.
And so those are syringes that people aren't sharing, that people aren't picking up and using again.
Everybody wants to talk about stigmas, but nobody actually wants to go out and be a part of the solution.
Right. And so there was a lot of, loss of interest in doing the cleanups, and we had one lady in particular that was doing them, but she was getting burnt out and having trouble getting them or getting volunteers to come out with her, and it was really on its last leg. And I thought, well, we got all this access to Narcan these days. What if we started giving out Narcan? She's like, oh, that's a good idea. And so I partnered with the Kentucky Harm Reduction Coalition and started getting us some Narcan to pass out during our cleanups, and that drew a little bit of more of a crowd. So we got a few more volunteers, and then I said, okay, well, we got, what if we gave out some water or some snacks? And so we just really started growing it. And so now, we go out in the community once or twice a month at least and pick up syringes. We partner with the University of Kentucky Harm Reduction Hub, and they test all of our syringes, and they can tell us what's in the drug supply in Kentucky now. So, we can look at the data and go, okay, well, we're seeing this, this, and this. We need to be aware of that because, if you've got a syringe, if you know that syringes have got fentanyl in it, and Narcan will reverse an overdose because of fentanyl, okay, but if there's xylazine in there, which is a horse tranquilizer, that person's probably not going to wake up.
Right.
So, they may not be dead or still overdosing from the fentanyl. They might just be knocked out.
Well, and for those of you who don't know, Narcan, you can literally inhale or give somebody, revive them through their nasal passages, inhaling it, and actually bring them out of a opiate overdose.
Yeah. And so it's, we were out doing a cleanup this past weekend for Mobilized Recovery Day of Service. And the cool thing is that since we started doing this, I've actually seen, Saturday morning, used Narcan underneath an overpass in downtown Louisville.
Nice.
So people are using the stuff that we're getting in their hands.
Nice.
We're seeing used fentanyl test strips where they can test to make sure that their drugs are safe and don't have fentanyl in them. Because we know no matter how much we want people to stop using, people are going to continue using drugs.
Right.
Let's make it a little bit safer, and so that hopefully maybe one day in the near future they say, okay, I'm ready for treatment, and we get them to treatment.
Well, and it's bridging gaps and barriers. Like, you don't know what you don't know, right?
Right.
So, like, I didn't know anything about recovery, didn't want to know anything about recovery. Sure as heck didn't want to be sober.
Yeah.
But then it's like once you learn and you start going to, meetings, you meet like-minded people, like, oh, wow, that guy is telling my story.
Yeah.
And he's got 20 years sober. He was just as addicted as I am. I'm not that unique individual. It's like just putting them around the right people, like-minded people, might open a door where 2 years later, not that same day, you see this dude get clean.
Yeah, and that's the whole point of what we do with harm reduction. It's not necessarily that I'm promoting the use of drugs. If in a perfect world, we wouldn't have any of this. But the reality is people are going to continue to use. And at some point, hopefully they are ready for treatment. And we can't get them to treatment if they're not breathing.
Right.
So let's do whatever we can so that hopefully we can get that person into treatment. And maybe one day they're a success story like so many of us are in recovery.
Right. So collaboration is huge for everything that we do as entrepreneurs and huge in the recovery community. What's been one of the most powerful partnerships you've built through this work?
Oh, man, there are so many. I'll give you a couple that kind of stand out. One is, with Tara Hyde, she's the one that hired me at YPR. Well, she left and became the CEO of People Advocating Recovery, and she does a lot of policy work and meets with legislators, and that really gave myself and YPR an opportunity to get more involved with advocacy work and making sure that we've got common sense laws for people in recovery so that we've got second chances available to people, second chance hiring, access to treatment, access to insurance, whatever that is. And, we were able to partner with her and work on some legislation with her. And I've really learned a lot from her doing that. We've had some success getting some recovery housing bills passed. We got we passed a bill that got fentanyl test strips legal. They used to be paraphernalia. They're not anymore. And so many other bills, and we continue to work on them. And there's power in numbers. And
right.
My one voice isn't going to change the minds of people sitting in Frankfurt. But if there are 100 of us, we might make that change. Another partnership is obviously the one that you and I have, and kind of cool going across the country and shooting footage and showing, what life can be like and showing success stories. And then, being able to partner with you, and I don't even know if you know this, but how often I brag about the event that you do in London, the GITT Recovery Rally every September.
Well, thanks, man.
It blows my mind, and people still look at me like I'm crazy when I say, yeah, there were 3,000 people there this year. In London?
Right.
In that small town?
Right.
Yeah.
People told me lately, they're like, yo, if you threw this with like how you do it in like New York or like Lexington or Louisville or something, like it'd be off the chain. Yeah.
I mean, in contrast, in Louisville, we had 300 people at our rally, and we got a lot more to pull from. We had a lot more going against us in that city too, because there's a lot more going on. But
it's impressive in London when the population's 8,000.
Yeah, yeah, and that just shows your reach too, because those 3,000 people aren't just from London. But, I mean, from all across the state. You got people coming in. You got hundreds of vendors there. Treatment providers, recovery support services. Other community partners, Domino's giving free pizza, shoe store giving you shoes to give out. I mean, all this stuff.
We gave away a car.
Yeah, I know.
2018 Kia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He gave away a car.
Thank you, Brian Charles and Keith Lakes.
There you go.
Thank you for your help.
Yeah, that was amazing. People are still talking about that.
Yeah.
Tara and I were talking earlier this week about how do we do that? So we're still your idea, maybe. Right. But I mean, just in a small community like that, to be able to do something on that scale, especially in a part of the state where there is so much stigma against people with substance use disorder.
Right.
You're in a part of the state where people want to look around and say, not in my backyard.
Right.
This isn't going on.
Right.
But we know it is.
Yeah.
And for us to come out and show the community what we can do, how many of us are there, it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Well, and the mayor's super cool too. I love that guy.
Yeah.
And you know, like you said, it's just putting it out there. And it's like me being from New York, man, you know, where I'm used to like fast paced, everybody rolling, tons of people. It's like sometimes just being in a spot where you can slow down. And ironically, me being 900 miles away to actually get sober in London, I felt it I had to give back to London and do stuff there. Cause it's like, you know, besides that, I would have no relationship there.
Yeah, and back to your point about, you know, the partnerships. You just said it. You got a partnership with the mayor. You love him. We wouldn't be able to do all this recovery stuff if it was just us in recovery. We need everybody, and that includes our elected officials. You know, it goes a long way when you got a mayor that says, hey, I support this.
Right.
Because if he's supporting it, then you're going to get a lot of other people in the community that are going to be like, okay, if the mayor's supporting this, we can get behind this.
Well, and also when you got the attitude as an entrepreneur, like I take it, you know, I take a lot of business things into sense too. And it's like, why wouldn't you support it? Like, it's a good thing. Right. Like, no matter if you're in recovery, you want nothing to do with recovery. You like, why would you not support like other people bettering their lives?
Yeah.
Like literally not just recovery, but life should be constant self-improvement. And then by improving yourself, you can help other people.
Yeah.
I can't help anybody else if I'm not at my maximum value.
Right. And how do we do that? You know, by giving people second chances, by having communities that support businesses that you know, don't frown upon you because you've got a felony on your record. You know, they're still going to hire you. One of the biggest second chance employers in the entire country is Chase Bank.
Right.
If they can hire a felon,
right.
I mean, everybody should be able to, right?
It's like, look at Rocky, man. It's like literally, you know, America's the land of second chances.
Yeah.
Like literally, that's like what we do.
Yeah. But oftentimes, because of the stigma and everything that goes around substance use disorder, alcoholism, drug addiction, whatever you want to term it, you know, people look at us and just like, you know, that's a moral failing. Well, it's not a moral failing. You know, if you give us the resources that we need, if you get us the treatment that we need, and then you support us when we get out of that treatment facility and you surround us with those wraparound services, the sky's the limit.
Right. Well, and if you got any kind of moral compass at all, no matter what you're doing in life, anybody that's trying to better themselves, I'm going to want to help that person.
Yeah.
Like no matter what it is. Like if you're literally trying to be a better human being, I want to be a part of that. Like you know, how many people did we need along our journey to get to where they're at? If I didn't have 50 people help me along my way, I wouldn't be up here.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, in the 9 years that I've been in recovery, I've seen so much change too. You know, there's a little bit less stigma around it. There's more opportunities for people like us out there. You know, I'm seeing more and more employers giving second chances. And, you know, that you know, sometimes that just starts with building those relationships within your community, with your council people, with your mayor, with business partners.
Right. I
mean, it just doesn't stop with you know, people in the recovery community. You know, one thing that, you know, I would like to see the recovery community do better is getting outside of our own comfort zone. And while I love your rally and 3,000 people there, you know, it's just us.
Right.
You know, why aren't we setting up outside of a Kroger and bragging about what we're doing? You know, why aren't we going to the Jeffersontown Gaslight Festival and setting up a booth? And, you know, we're outside of that recovery space. You know, now we're actually out in the community where we've got to really break that stigma against us and showing people this is what we do, this is what we're about.
Well, trust me, I agree with you, but brokering that to be thrown at a high school, like that was the whole. Trust me, I broke right into that community because I thought the same thing. I'm like, I'm gonna smack this in a high school where it's gonna get all sorts of. If this don't go right, it's all on my shoulders, and that's where I wanted to put it. One, because I had the mindset as an entrepreneur, like this is gonna grow, God's gonna bless it, and look at it now. And two, we need that space. You need like an open football field. So that way we get 10,000 people some year, we can fit them.
Right.
But also to break that stigma, like, yo, a high school's letting us throw this here. It's a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's part of the reason why for a couple of years we did our rally at the University of Louisville.
Right.
You know, I thought that it would be a good way to showcase what we do and partner with somebody that's outside of our space. And you know, I thought it'd be good for U of L to promote it also, you know, saying, hey, look, we're definitely part of this movement. But I still do think that we do kind of sometimes kind of silo ourselves in sometimes, and you know, some of the events that we do. And it's, we do want to have these events because we want people early in recovery to know what resources are out there for them, right? But I think that we need to start looking at that other piece too, and getting out actually into the community more and showcasing what we're doing. Start bragging about ourselves a little bit.
Right. So between all your responsibilities, YPR, the LRCC, which is the Louisville Recovery Community Connections that you're also over, advocacy, travel, how do you personally stay grounded and centered? You're married, you're a new homeowner, congratulations.
Yeah.
How do you personally, what do you do? What are the tools from your playbook to stay grounded and centered?
Having fun. I like to get out in nature. I like to do a lot of hiking. So my wife is into that also. So we make it a point to, take, some long weekends from time to time and get out in nature and just get away. I like going to the sporting events. I'm going to the U of L football game this coming weekend. So get out and enjoy myself. You just mentioned we bought a house and it's my first house I've ever owned,
It's awesome.
Kind of a late start because of my, what happened earlier on in my life. But I'm grateful to be where I'm at now. And we got an acre of land. And so I've been out in most of it's woods. So I've actually been out in the woods clearing out a spot. So I've got a area that's cleared out for a couple hammocks. I got another area that's cleared out for a fire pit. So to be able just to get out in my own backyard and do that. Love golfing.
Nice.
Love getting out to golf. And then, even when we're talking work and traveling, you and I do it. When we go places, it's not just work.
No,
we went to Atlanta. We got to meet Dominique Wilkins.
Yeah, you got the picture with the dream team.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
Yeah. LA this year, we went out and rented a drop top Mustang and cruised the coast and did a lot of other stuff, but even before the conference started. And then once the conference was done, we went out and explored and had a good time. So, you got to make sure that you're doing stuff, that you're taking care of yourself.
Right.
If I'm worrying about everybody else,
right,
then one day I'm going to look in the mirror and go, oh my God, I'm miserable.
Right.
I've done that in the past. And, I've got to make sure that I've got me time and that, I'm doing stuff to unwind and take the stress out of my life. And, I think that's, it goes back to what my sponsor said years ago was, what do you do for fun?
Right.
Stop going to so many meetings, go out and do something for yourself. And that's really, stuck with me over those years. And so, I try to do those things. And my wife's got 3 daughters, so I've got 3 stepdaughters. And, we've, take them to Holiday World. We took the entire family down to Florida for a week this year and spent some time at the beach and spent way too much money. But I can't take that money when I'm gone. Might as well spend it and have some fun now. So
yeah, live life while you're alive.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So, making sure that we spending some time with the family and all the in-laws and all that, making sure that, definitely spending some family time.
What's one moment in your journey where you thought, this is why I do this? And what kind of legacy do you want to leave behind for the recovery movement or others still struggling?
Man, there's just been so many moments. It could be from not knowing if I had a grant, that we were getting a grant to make sure that I kept my staff in place who are all in recovery, and then getting the news that we got the grant and just bawling. Just all that weight and that pressure was off. That was one of those moments. Coming down to your event and seeing the lanterns and I guess this year the candles and seeing everybody around and doing that and how many people are actually in recovery and this year too, Healing Appalachia, going to a 2-day music festival that's dubbed the largest recovery music festival in the U.S., maybe even in the world. And, you got 25,000 people there. night 1, 30,000 people, probably night 2. No talk of politics, no talk of religion, didn't see one fight, not too many people that were, intoxicated. And I think the report came out that there was one arrest all weekend.
Which is fantastic if anybody knows concerts of 30,000 people.
Oh, yeah. Somebody jokingly said, but there's probably a lot of truth to it too, said, if we want to heal this nation, then we just need to have this music festival everywhere and let Tyler Childers and Chris Stapleton lead the way. And I was like, well, there you have it. Because it was amazing to see an event like that where they had over 4,000 volunteers that were all in recovery.
Yeah, that's impressive.
That worked that event. And I'm not talking just people that have got long-term recovery, multiple years recovery. I'm talking about people that maybe had 30 days.
Right, or in a sober living.
Can you imagine the sense of purpose they got?
Right. Just
from doing that and going, oh my God, I've got a chance.
Stuff like that will help people stay sober and clean.
And seeing, in between each set, people get on stage and share their success stories and what recovery is to them. And before Chris Stapleton, before Tyler Childress, each night, a group of college students getting on stage and training 25 and 30,000 people how to administer Narcan. That's why I do this.
Nice. Any last words of wisdom for the audience?
Oh, last words of wisdom. I always kind of look back to a quote that I learned back in my tennis days in high school. I had to memorize a poem, or part of a poem called Attitude by Charles Swindoll. And basically it was, just basically talking about your attitude and how that's the one thing that we are in control of. And that, played into tennis because it goes back to what I was saying. If I got upset about losing the point, I'm not focusing on the present now. And so the last line of that poem goes, I'm convinced that life is 10% what happens to me and 90% how I react to it. And so it is with you.
Right.
And I truly, truly believe that. So no matter what happens in my life, I'm in control of it.
As much as I want to fix, manage, and control everything else around me, I can't control anybody, but I can control the way I react to any situation that comes at me.
Yep. We are in charge of our attitudes, and that is the one thing that we can control. And if I'm having a bad day, then guess what? I can change my attitude real quick by getting my dog and going on a 1-mile walk.
Exactly. Well, Billy, you're proof that leadership and recovery can be entrepreneurial, compassionate, driven by lived experience. For anyone listening who wants to connect with you, collaborate, or get involved with YPR, where can they reach you, buddy?
They can reach me at billy.o'brien, O-B-R-Y-A-N, at youngpeopleinrecovery.org, or you can find me on our website, youngpeopleinrecovery.org.
Nice. What about, you want to plug any socials?
You can follow us on social media, Young People in Recovery. If you want to see kind of what I'm doing and what I've got going on, I'm really plugged into our Louisville chapter, and you can follow us on YPR Louisville KY.
Nice. Hold up that hat. If somebody wants to get one of those dope looking hats, where do they grab that?
They can get that on
GitLive.com.
GitLive.com.
GITTLIVE.com. Get with the program. Don't get left behind.
Yeah.
Appreciate you, brother.
Yeah, man. Thanks
for coming on the show.
Yeah, man. Thanks.